God. Hello everybody, welcome back. A couple of months ago, I set out on a quest in Subnautica to build the world's longest base through every biome. Now we accomplished this quest and it was just about as tiring, headache-inducing, and tedious as you would imagine. But now, I'm gonna freaking do it again. Subnautica Below Zero is a game. It has biomes, and it has base pieces, so you know what's about to happen. That's right, today we're going to be building the world's longest Subnautica Below Zero base through every biome. So let's just jump into it, because this is going to take a while. Now just like last time, let us first establish what are we going to count as a biome, because in the game there's a lot of things that technically count as a biome, even though they're not really represented in the world, or they're not really worth building to. Now, just like last time, I'm going to employ the help of the wiki here to determine which ones to build to. We're going to do all of the above water biomes, we're going to do all of the aquatic biomes, and then we're also going to do a very solid number of the underwater caves. Now, when determining which ones to do and which ones not to do, I mostly try to pay attention to how distinct and different looking they are from the rest. To give you a good example, the lily pad biomes and the deep lily pad biome caves have quite a distinct feel from one another, so we'll be building to both. On the other hand, something like the thermal spires and the thermal spires caves to me look quite similar, and so we're only going to be counting them as one biome. Also, I'm not going to be doing the mini biomes since most of them are already contained within larger biomes themselves. Now, just like last time, my goal was to build an observatory in every single one of these biomes. So what I did first is teleport through all of these and place down a beacon. This would not be the place I would be building to necessarily, just more of a visual reference for me to know where about the biome is located. So we have the Arctic Spires, Delta Island, Glacial Basin, Glacial Bay, East Arctic, West Arctic, Arctic Kelp Forest, Lily Pad Islands, Purple Vents, Shallow Twisty Bridges, Sparse Arctic, Thermal Spires, Tree Spires, Twisty Bridges, World Edge, Crystal Caves, Deep Lily Pads Cave, Deep Twisty Bridges, and the Fabricator Caverns. That's a lot of biomes, but I am happy to report that for once, I actually went in with a plan. Using the Below Zero map that you can find online, link in the description, I drew myself a bit of a map of how I plan to build the base. Rather than building one long line, I decided to make it a bit more of a spider web originating from the Delta Island, which is kind of in the middle of the whole thing. I built a nice observatory on the island and started building toward the lily pad and tree spire area. Just like with the other long base videos, I would mostly be trying to utilize the glass compartment and the vertical connector pieces, just because they cover a lot of distance. But with everything set, the build was well on its way. It didn't actually take me too long to make it to the lily pads area and build an observatory, and after that I pivoted slightly and headed toward the tree spires. Of course, I was using both the fast build and speed commands to make sure everything was going a lot faster than it normally would, and it didn't take me too long to run into a Calistart friend, after which I was finally able to build the observatory in the tree spires. Next up, I started pushing more to the right side of the map across the purple vents. Now, as you can already see, something that's going to become really bad in this video is the lag. Well, let me explain to you a bit how it works. The longer you build a base, the longer the lag is going to be whenever you try to place down a new piece that's connected to it. I will come back to this a little bit later, but for now, just know that that's why you're seeing it in the footage. Of course, it didn't take me long to build an observatory in the purple vents, and then I continued pushing onward. I also had to employ some interesting twists and turns here to avoid the big icebergs that were kind of in my way. I built the observatory, and then I decided to keep pushing in that same direction all the way to the crater edge, or world edge, or void if you will. Built the observatory, and at this point I have to say the lag was getting so bad that I decided to completely abandon this area and go build in a different part of the world. Here's a little flyby of what a base stretching all the way from the world edge to the island looks like. Now, from last time doing this, I already found a method to eliminate the base lag. Let me explain how this works. In Subnautica, when you put down a base piece and then you try to put another one beside it, you can see that it's kind of snapping to areas on what is essentially a grid. Now, as long as two pieces of the base are on this grid, it means they can probably be connected. However, it also means that the lag will persist. That's why even if you have a straight line, deleting 1 or 2 or even 10 blocks from the middle will not eliminate the lag as long as they are on the same grid. The only way to get rid of the lag is to build something that isn't on the grid. But then how do you connect the bases? Well, last time I figured out the closest we could get to feasibly connecting these bases is to build a moon pool and then vertical connectors up into it. Is it the perfect solution? Well, no, but at least it looks like it is a connected base. And for all terms and purposes, the pieces do actually end up overlapping slightly, so that's pretty connected in my book. First, I built an observatory in the thermal spires. From there, quickly made my way to the twisty bridges. From there, decided to venture a bit more west toward the kelp forest area. And then I decided to push even further and build toward the glacial basin and build some of the first surface bases we would have. Now, you might be thinking I'm skipping big parts here, but there's nothing really fascinating that happened while I was building all this stuff. It was mostly just me listening to a podcast while having the game sped up in front of me, waiting for the lag to resolve itself and gradually losing FPS. Now, building away from the glacial basin proved to be quite challenging. A lot of the canyons that lead toward the more closed up surface areas are tough to build through because they're very tight. And so I certainly had to implement some questionable strategies. Here I finally placed down the observatory in the glacial basin, and here you can see some sped up footage of me running through back to the glacial bay just to see how crazy that base was. Then I actually came back to the Twisty Bridges biome and decided to build toward their shallow part, plopped down an observatory, and then built further out toward the sparse Arctic area, got the base down, and then it was up to something tough. I was about to go toward the Arctic Spires. Now this is the surface biome that is the furthest away from a body of water, so it would certainly be a new challenge to build towards it. The first challenge came in the form of the bridge, which of course wasn't extended, and while I could just fly up since this video is technically not about doing this legit, I'm using console commands anyway, I actually decided to try a way that you can technically do this in survival, where you're building from the inside out, always building 2 compartments and then a hatch, and it worked. So while I wasted a solid amount of time, I did eventually get up there. Then it was more of the classic canyon navigating, but eventually I built my way all the way to the Arctic Spires. At this point I also decided to plop down the observatory in the West Arctic. Now this wasn't originally on the list that I wrote for myself, but technically I was already there, so I decided, why not? Now these are basically all of the biomes that are easily accessible. All that was left is the cave stuff. And you might be thinking, well, it's pretty easy, right? You just build down, but let me tell you, it is much harder than that. I decided to kick it off with the deep twisty bridges, and let me tell you, this one required a ton of planning since I needed to get down through a very narrow opening. Thing is, once you're already halfway down, there's no real way to course correct, so if you don't get the positioning right at the start, you're gonna run into a wall and have to delete the whole thing, which at this point, with the lag I was experiencing, was really difficult. Despite all that, I did manage to build the observatory. Here's a little flyby for you of what that crazy build down there looks like. Oh yeah, I also managed to get myself catapulted into space somehow. I guess there was just too much base for the game to handle, so it had to give me a drop. And then came the deep lily pads. Now this area was practically the same in concept, but I found it even harder to navigate, so I had to do a lot of free cam and ghost to kind of scout out the way first before I commenced building, just because of how long that takes. Nonetheless, I managed to actually navigate down pretty okay. I have to say the below zero building system is quite expansive, and a lot of the smaller compartments can be used in a smart way to reorient the base even when you're down there. And just like that, we put the observatory into the deep lily pads. Now at this point we only had 2 biomes left, and of course they're the deepest ones you can get to. It's the crystal caves and the fabricator caverns. Now I branched off the base near the purple vents, built one more moon pool kind of reorient section so I can get the base as lag free as possible, and started building. What you can also notice, if you look in the top left corner, is that my FPS has now gradually progressed from around a stable 80 at the start to like stable 20. and this would only continue getting worse, so I apologize if the footage is a bit choppy. Building down here was essentially more of the same. It certainly took a lot of time and a lot of planning, but I was able to reach the crystal caverns without much trouble. Now, as I went on, the lag kept steadily increasing, but I kind of set out a little challenge for myself, which was to essentially not build any more moon pools and just try to push through and make this like one long stretch. Bad idea in retrospect, but here we are. And now we were on to the last bit, the push toward the fabricator caverns. Now, for me, this is a tough one because I always get lost down here, so I had to fly around a couple of times to make sure I was heading in the right direction. I also started implementing this sort of diagonal way of building by placing down a ton of 90-degree connectors. It looks really funky when we run through it later, trust me. But at last, after hours and hours of work, now with around 16 FPS on average, I was finally in the fabricator caverns, and I was able to build the very last observatory of this challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, I present you with the world's longest, probably, Subnautica Below Zero base. Now, I know everybody always asks me to run through these bases, but the thing is, this base is more of a spider web, so it doesn't really make much sense. So what I'll do here is I'll just show you what it looks like to run from the surface of near around the purple vents all the way down into the fabricator caverns in one stretch. I have to put a massive epilepsy warning here though. There's going to be a lot of flashing because I have to speed this up quite a bit so you're not looking at a 10-minute video. So if you have any issues with that, I recommend you skip to the next timestamp. Anyway, enjoy. And that, my friends, is the world's longest Subnautica Below Zero base through every single biome. I really hope you guys enjoyed. This was a ton of work, so if you did, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All of those would be very, very much appreciated. If you have more ideas for crazy Subnautica challenges, please leave them down in the comments. I would love to read them. And with that, I'm going to wish you all a beautiful rest of today, and I'll see you in whatever next video I make. Bye-bye.